call the dialogue to order and tell you a little bit about what we're doing and why we're here. So my name is Rathke, and I'm here. We started these dialogues a little more, I guess, the first of the year. We've been here about a year now. My predecessor is here, which is an honor to have Robert here. I'm going to actually have, it's not a, so yeah, it's always, we have big feet to fill.
They're huge.
I'm going to go, that's right, wow, boom, we're going to be here all night. We're going to be here all night with these jokes. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to introduce sort of why we do this and sort of how we see this particular session. And then we're going to take a minute and go around the room since we don't have like 1,000 people, so it's not that hard to get a sense of who you are. And if you're not in a witness protection program, just go ahead and get to who you are and what you're interested in. A lot of you, I really made an effort to try to get here because you've got something to say about fair trade and why it's important. In the real work that I do most of the time, we call this an organizing committee, not just a dialogue. What Fairgrind started doing after the first of the year was one day a month we would hold a dialogue about some topic. And we've talked about everything under the sun. Katrina, Treme, I know you were here for Treme when we talked about the show. We talked about the lockout of the NFL football players. You can look on the website on the dialogues. There's still a lot of the YouTube things that are there. So we've covered the waterfront. Finally, we wanted to do one on something that's important to our very mission here at Fairgrinds, which is fair trade. Fair trade has, you know, not only as part of the name of Fairgrinds, that's what the fair really stands for in my book. I mean, it is close to the fair ground. Some people make a mistake and talk about the horses running at Fairgrinds. That's really not. That's not true. I don't care what that front table says. Those horses stay on the wall. There's no racing about here. But the fair grinds has always stood for the fact that from the very first day that Robert and Elizabeth opened here, we've been the only 100% exclusive fair trade coffee house here. So we want people to know why that's important. There's actually something I'm going to try to convince y'all before you go home. And as a long-time organizer, I like these meetings to not go past 90 minutes. I learned this as a young boy when I first started in the work because I was working on a group called Parents for Justice. It was one of the welfare rights groups in Roxbury and Mission Hill. And they all had to put their pistols on the table before the meeting started. And they gave you a very set time when they were going to pick them up again. And that's sort of great training if you're a 20-year-old community organizer for that meeting better end on time. You know? You learn, so I'm not going to ask any of you to come put whatever your piece is up here, but I'm going to tell you I understand, and so we're going to move this meeting along. So at 8:30 there's going to be a mental bell that's now rung in my mind for the last 40-some years about organizing meetings. Time to get it down. We can talk later, we can talk among ourselves, but we don't want it to get out of hand. So let's just briefly go around and introduce themselves, and I'm going to go in, and I've got a lot of people I'm going to ask to talk to.
My name's Amanda, and I'm a social worker. I don't know a lot about coffee, but I like coffee, and I like coffee shops.
You're halfway there. Okay, good. You're here.
Yes, and I'm here.
I'm Daniel. I work over at Odyssey House. I grew up in the Northwest, so been a part of the coffee culture for apparently.
Kevin Petto, Coast Roast Coffee. I supply the fair trade coffee to Fairgrinds.
That's right. And is recently certified as a fair trade roaster.
That is correct. We were not, I mean, we were buying fair trade coffee, but we were not a fair trade certified roaster. So within the past month and a half, I would say, we've got our fair trade certified. So we are a fair trade certified roaster, 100%. And we're actually only, we're based in Long Beach, Mississippi. And we are only the second coffee roaster in Mississippi that is a fair trade certified coffee roaster. And there's only one other coffee roaster here in Louisiana. We do, and that's a fair trade certified. And we do a lot of a lot of our business over here, a lot of the coffee shops over here. And so kind of like the second one over here too. So it's kind of weird like that. But yeah, we're the,
And Kevin said his last name, so you know he actually lives here. Right?
Better,
From
yes,
here.
yes, yes,
That's right.
yes.
Yeah, that's.
I can't hide my zip code.
No,
80
no,
X
I
on my
don't
last
think you
name.
can.
You know,
I don't care where you try to live, you're a Louisiana boy.
Yeah.
And I want to introduce Z. Thornton as the manager now of Fairgrounds Coffeehouse. You know, she came on just in time to have the espresso machine die, this Isaac thing, and now she actually has been trained, she and Katie were trained in how to start the generator, which is really one of the things they'd hoped to learn before their time was done. Z, you want to say anything?
Just appreciate everybody coming out. This is obviously something that's super
Chris,
important.
got a chair up here. 9 out of 10 is less. I got you. Go ahead.
This is obviously something super important to our everyday lives, and we're excited to talk to you guys about it. I know I want to make this guy feel awkward.
How you doing?
Hi, I'm Nadine Pizer, but I was a LeBlanc, so that's mine.
Yeah, that's your connection.
I like coffee. I'm not a coffee connoisseur, but I need my coffee. I teach at Cabrini around the corner, and have just really the last couple of years gotten interested in fair trade. I now teach social justice to the girls around the corner. And of course, we have a fair trade piece of the curriculum, and then Madeline and I, not to take your introduction away from you, but we serve on the Catholic Relief Services Fair Trade Committee here in New Orleans that's hooked up with the Archdiocese. And then I met Wade, and we brought Fair Trade coffee over to Cabrini for exams to help the girls through their exams. And so I'm here to learn more and to share the little bit that we do know by some immersion into CRS's Fair Trade program.
They've been great partners with Fairgrounds Coffee.
Oh, no, well, like she said, I think she took pretty
Yeah.
much everything, and I don't even drink coffee, but fair trade is very important to me.
Yes.
Yes.
Elisa Mason. I am sales for French Truck Coffee. We are Fairtrade certified. We are a local roaster in New Orleans. Don't let my name fool you. My grandmother's is George's. I'm from Cajun country. And long story. Around the world in 80 days. I'm a laid-off teacher. 6 months back in Orleans Parish. I'm too expensive for the system. I'm working for a wonderful small business that took a chance, and I'm a coffee fiend anyway, so it sort of fit. But we are fair trade certified. We are in New Orleans. We always will be roasting in New Orleans. Right now we're in Carrollton. We're about to move to a larger location in the Central Business District. Our business model is 24 hours. You call us, we roast your coffee. There are no bins at our place. There are no beans sitting anywhere. Old coffee smells like dirt. And
Well, there you go.
it does. I mean, we have
She's
a
being
bag.
kind.
Yeah. I wasn't going to say something ugly on it.
That's
Old coffee smells like dirt, and we believe in customer service. We always want to be small enough that each one of our business partners is treated as the most valued person in our group, and that's the way that Jeffrey Meeker, the owner and roaster, want to do things, and we're very proud to be here.
Hey all, my name is Zach Booth. I just moved down here from Vicksburg, Mississippi, right up the river. I like coffee and progressive politics, and Elisa was nice enough to invite me, so here I am.
We met each other on Facebook arguing with someone last night.
Hi, I'm Susan Mahaffey, and I'm a third-generation New Orleanian. Started drinking coffee out of a demi-tasse when I was about 4, with 1 tablespoon, maybe a teaspoon, maybe a tablespoon of coffee with a lot of milk. Anyway, I'm just interested in the fair trade, and I came here to see what the fair trade was all about.
Hi, I'm Katie Murphy. I work here at Fairgrounds. I have a long history of coffee shop working and coffee shop drinking and making, and I work directly with coffee wholesalers, and I really would like to support, and I'm always open to learn more about something I do so much.
And everyone knows Kitty was the rock we rode in on when we came in October 15th. Was our first manager, and continues to make everybody happy every time she's here.
Nate Butler, I help out around Fairtrade sometimes, and very obviously into Fairtrade mission. I'm also interested in, what this whole directory thing is about, and I'd be curious to know what people have to say about that. Hi, I'm Hillary. I'm a master's in social work student at Tulane, and myself and two others are working on a professional project which is launching a website called Boost Fairtrade NOLA. So we're obviously very interested in everything you guys are doing, and maybe more.
Hi, my name is Samuel. I'm only a senior in high school, senior in high school. I'm just with my mom. She works with, the community. She's interested in fair grinds, and so I just tagged along.
Good.
Hey, you're president of St. Aug, aren't you? Oh, okay. All right.
That's coming up. You should. And he's doing dual enrollment at Tulane. So you all pray for him that he gets his Posse scholarship. He's up for the Posse scholarship, full tuition next Tuesday. So get there. Congratulations.
And we're going to guess you're his mother?
Yeah, oh, yes. Hi, my name is Sylvia Bridges. I teach at Hines. I teach English as a second language. I've been teaching for about 30-some years. So I'm ready for the second half of my life because he's getting ready to graduate. So I get to do stuff I want to do now. Because he's going to get this Posse scholarship. So I told him I put my money up front already, so it's gonna be on. But I am working with A Community Voice, and I learned about fair grinds through a young lady named Audrey at Utno. I worked with Audrey and just doing what I'm doing now, phone banking, calling. And I've never come. I've always wanted to come because they have meetings here, and I kept saying fair. And I'm always missed the meetings, but today it was by fluke. I got invited by Maria, and she said, come to me. I said, no, I don't want to go. And then I said that. I said, why do you want to go? I said, you need to broaden your horizons. So I said, I'm going. So
there you go, and we're glad to have you.
Yeah.
My name is Frank Mays. I'm a musician / educator, and I'm on the board of directors of the Musicians Union here, local 174-496. And we decided the last meeting to adapt the fair trade music, which is something that's rather new, starting in Portland, Oregon, and going to Seattle, down to Los Angeles. Now the National in New York is aware of it. And there's a whole set of rules that are very interesting. We're working on getting certified. Board of Directors just has to approve it. And then we get to use a logo, fair trade music logo. So I'm here to learn, and I've got information on the music aspect of it. Too many musicians are paying to play.
Yeah.
And too many musicians are living on tips. Tips are supposed to be extra. After you get paid, you get the tip. So that's my soapbox.
There you go.
Janet Hayes, community organizer, activist, I suppose more of an activist than an organizer at this point. Just wanted to come back into my old hood and hang out with really cool people, and I got Wade's messages, and the subject really interests me, and as most subjects to do with social justice and this sort of thing interests me, so just wanted to find out what's going on.
I'm Marie Hurt. I work for A Community Voice, and I also helped out with the Fairgrinds website and stuff like that. So, and obviously support the Fair Trade mission.
Beth Butler, A Community Voice, and I volunteer at Fairgrinds.
I bet she does. Well, I'm Robert Thompson. I've already been introduced, but I am happily retired and happy because the vision of this place 11 years ago continues in good form. And that vision basically was to do a community-sensitive business, not built on the usual principles of business, profit and greed, but instead service. And one of the key links in making that happen was embracing the fair trade principles. And sad to say, we've had fair trade coffee, we've had fair trade chocolate, we didn't have fair trade music, but I can see that, you know, the fair trade movement is clearly expanding its borders. And you know, we'll be looking at bananas, we'll be looking at a lot of things that come from third world countries, and we need, I think, to expand that concept to our domestic business as well. So thank you, Wade, for continuing. God knows where he dropped out of heavens for me, to continue the vision and expand on it. And I have to say that, can I do one little anecdote? When we first opened, none of the roasters in town would do fair trade. They all came to me, there was 3 of them at the time, and said, Robert, you don't want fair trade, it's expensive, it's not good. I said, well, let's see. And sure enough, we made good coffee, I think, for 10 years, right? Some of my customers. And it was cheap, cheaper than, you know, the commercial corporate coffees. And most people didn't realize they were drinking fair trade and didn't care. But the ones who did, and know, we made it work here. We made those roasters certify themselves, and you know, it's a little leverage as a small business had on making things better. So, you know, I think we need to, you know, to realize small businesses can make a difference, can change the business models, and I'm off my soapbox and move on.
Hey, I'm Bill Murphy, and I just heard about the meeting, and I'm interested in all things fair trade, far beyond coffee. You know, I've been reading a lot about it, and I heard Dole wants to get into a fair trade banana business, which probably means they'll try to change what fair trade means.
Right.
But anyway, you know, I think we've got a really great opportunity here in New Orleans. You know, fair trade as a marketing point for all the restaurants in the city. I mean, with the tourist business and everything, I mean, it could, you know, I see it as a big opportunity for the city to actually, you know, increase tourism, create jobs here. You know, fair trade, you know, you can, I mean, because the markup for restaurants, you know, once you've got bananas, you've got chocolate, you've got coffee, that's your whole dessert menu. I mean, sugar should be in there. Yeah, sugar, cane sugar. I mean, that's a dessert menu right there, and if the restaurants could encourage people to eat more desserts by saying fair trade. I'm saying, you know, the top-end restaurants, you go out and...
I'll be easy. And here in the city, there's a lot of desserts being eaten now. So
Yeah,
it's just a matter of changing
it for fair trade.
Well, great to have you, Bill.
Yeah.
Can I ask Chris? I'm going to ask you to speak later, so you don't have to go too long.
No problem. My name is Chris Hammond, and everybody knows I'm late. And actually, I'm the financial officer for the local labor union that loads and unloads the ships in the here in the port of New Orleans. Most of the time, the guy behind the scenes that's crunching numbers and going through rules and trying to make the actual work rules that we have that we work by here run and go smoothly and apply them. But Wade actually reached out to me and asked me to come here. And I've actually learned a lot, even though I thought I knew everything about the industry. There's still more to learn, and I mean, it's a hands-on thing for us to find out some things about coffee and fair trade that I did not know. So I've actually been working now for the port for about 20 years, and Wade walked in with one email and completely put a big area that I did not know or understand about. So
well, anything that brings more jobs in, we're going to get you working for us here. So this is why I call this an organizing committee. We're all starting at different places where we know, but the simplest definition, here's what fair trade coffee means. Fair trade as a principle means that you're assuring that producers get a fair share for their labor. Coffee, there are a lot of different industries, a lot of different products that are certified as fair trade. Coffee is a hand-grown, hand-picked crop. You're not going up a mile and a quarter high where shade-grown coffee is growing in Central America with some kind of a machine. You're up there dragging those bales back. It's very difficult labor, it's very careful labor. So what fair trade does as a minimum is guarantee that the price for Fairtrade coffee that's certified will be the price in the New York Stock Exchange commodities for coffee plus 50 cents. Okay? Now, sounds good. What that means, regardless of what Robert said, is that actually, if you're Folgers out here on Industrial Canal, or if you're Louisiana, you're buying coffee, Robusta beans or Arabica beans, you're paying in the bulk, you're buying it by containers. Each container is 30,000, 35,000 pounds of green beans. You're buying that, you're bringing it in, you're buying it as cheap as you can get it. So what this does is guarantee that the coffee we're getting, you're already going to pay a premium because you're paying to make sure the producers get it. Now, actually, in the fields, it's always an issue how you get it. Now, so when we talk about certified fair trade, what we're talking about is an outfit that was organized over the last 20 years. It's commonly known as FLO, which is a licensing organization. Fair Trade, F, licensing, L-O, organization, based in, its headquarters is Bonn, Germany. And it's made up of 20 or so different fair trade organizations in different countries, largely in the industrialized developed countries. Europe, there's a fair trade organization in each one, Canada and the US. And once they certify, that means they're not only certifying that coffee is getting grown this way, but it's being grown by cooperatives, which means producer-owned, 340 different producer-owned cooperatives, which are small producers who are putting together their common labor. This is not a corporate thing, producing this coffee in hopes to get that differential. To get certified, that's 3 years of being grown organic, because this is all organic and fair trade certified. 3 years organic, no pesticides, whatever, that you're keeping the soil in a certain way, that you're picking a certain way, that you're segregating it from other coffees, et cetera, et cetera. It's quite a complicated process. Plus these small producer cooperatives in Guatemala, Honduras, Peru, Mexico, wherever we're getting coffee, are also paying to be inspected by FLO certifiers who come in once a year, go through the whole process. So when Kevin and Alyssa talk about being certified as roasters, there's a certain protocol they're having to go through, how they're segregating what they do with fair trade beans as opposed to other beans, if they roast those, where they store, what, et cetera, et cetera. So all this becomes very important. It's complicated. You know, when we're selling a cup of coffee for $2 at our counter, we're not explaining to them that a $2 cup of coffee we're selling actually cost us more than what they would pay at CC's or Starbucks. But that's the case. I mean, because we believe in that particular fairness to the producers creates a better cup of coffee. It's not an exploitive blend. Now, once you get out of coffee, it's a complicated world. So tea is also fair trade certified, but that's not necessarily small cooperatives. That can be very large, 5,000, 10,000 worker operations in India that are certified based on certain procedures and certain handling, but are not cooperatives. When you read that there's a dispute now with FLO and Fairtrade USA, this goes to the heart of this very issue of the corporatization of fair trade products. So right now in FLO, when we talk about certification, when Robert was talking about, these are part of these smaller producer cooperatives in Central America moving their coffee up through the various procedures to us. The controversy now, when Starbucks says they're selling fair trade coffee, they self-certify. So when they say they've got 5–10% of their coffee is now fair trade-like beans, there's a special fair trade certification that Starbucks is doing for itself. Green Mountain Coffee, to some degree, in the same way, some of the larger operations that are saying they're using fair trade are not necessarily certified. So you end up competing both with the Louisiana coffee companies, God love them, and the Maxwell houses and whatever, but also with Starbucks and others that are saying they're certified, but only maybe a small part of what they're serving is certified. Robert was telling me a story outside before we started about PJ's having a certified moment. Back when they first opened here, and they thought, well, hey, maybe somebody will think we're certified if we put a bag up there and count. So there's a lot of this, and it's complicated because even on the progressive side, there's some roasters. Just Coffee out of Madison, Wisconsin is one that believes it's better to do direct. They don't believe Flow does enough to certify the coffee. So they certify through their own methodology producers. CSR, which CRS rather, Catholic Relief Services, which you're going to hear about in a minute, has Fairtrade. Some of that's Flow certified, some of that is certified in their own system. So I don't want to get you all in the weeds here and confused. The important thing is it's certified for right now. And the important thing you're going to hear as well is that we really believe, and I'm going to ask Kevin and Alyssa to talk more about this, we need more Fairtrade coffee to come to the Port of New Orleans. And this is part of why, when Chris kids me about educating him, what I really educate him about is not Fairtrade coffee, but the fact that the Fairtrade Coffee Buying Cooperative that handled 90 containers of coffee a year, 20 different purchasers that banded together, who are all roasters in Tennessee and Texas and Canada and Wisconsin, etc., used to bring all of their coffee through the Port of New Orleans. It makes sense. Central America, that's where the coffee is coming from. We're the closest port. If you're dealing with a cooperative like we do in Honduras, they're bringing it through the, Cortez, the Port of Cortez outside San Pedro Sula. And then we couldn't understand why was it going to New York sometimes and then coming back here when we're so close. And so as Chris and I left the last Port of New Orleans meeting, he said, is there wait, how many containers were they really moving until they stopped coming to New Orleans? I said, I don't really know, but I'll find out. It turned out 90 containers, and we were saying, hey, if it was 5 or 10, it was worth arguing about. 90, that's worth fighting for, if you ask me. So why did they stop 7 years ago? This thing, Katrina thing. Sort of they got off of their game. They were moving Dupree's here on the Industrial Canal, the largest coffee storage warehouse in the world. So unfortunately, Katrina also got some of their coffee spoiled, as it did other people. They got out of the habit of bringing, so they've been bringing their coffee through New York and New Jersey. They're about to debate this fall, bringing it back to New Orleans, which is part of why we wanted people to know more about it. We wanted more fair trade, but we don't have enough fair trade coffee coming through the Port of New Orleans, do we, Kevin?
Not at all.
Talk to people about that. We want more.
That is part of the battle that I fight, every day, looking for, which fair trade coffees are currently available here. I could ship in, I could get the importers to, I could get, let me say I only deal with local importers. And I could get those importers to pull in coffee from the West Coast, but, it would be so much nicer if it were, coming straight from here. So, I've been having Honduran now for a while, because that's what they've had. That went out. There's some stuff that came in from Houston that we got moved in just because there was zero. Wait, I gotta call you up on the phone. Wait, look, you know how I love the port here, but I ain't no coffee here. So
that's our problem.
So you need to brew something tomorrow morning here, and so I've got to, I got to do something. So anything that's available from here, I buy. But if we're going to keep fair trade, sometimes it's got to come in. It's got to come back from.
So one of the small changes we made between when Robert and when Katie and I started putting this together is we said, well, let's try to see if we can get all of our fair trade right here in the Port of New Orleans, because that obviously, talking about my union brothers, that's jobs, that's economic development in the city of New Orleans, that's here in our port. It'll be bound to be fresher.
Lower cost, more coffee shops would be more likely to buy.
Some people care about the environment, that's less of a footprint.
Yeah.
New York, trucking it down. It hit every note in the song. So, by God, we'll do that. And it actually took us a while before we realized that sometimes we were using too much fair trade coffee. So, we were going with whatever Kevin could find. And sometimes it meant, we had one of these sort of come to Jesus Kevin, is this really, some of this coffee going through New York, coming back here? And he said, yeah, sometimes they don't have it. It's coming from Houston, it's coming from New York. And that was like crazy. So that when he talks about the conversation, I said, well, at least let me know, you know, because sometimes we have Mexican Altura, if that's what's there. Sometimes we have Honduran. Sometimes we have whatever happens to be the fair trade coffee. We can sort of get off the boat as it comes into New Orleans, and then sometimes we're getting it from wherever we have to get it. And that's why I'm trying to recruit our friends at ILA 3000 and the port. This is a market. This is something, we could be the fair trade port, but I don't want to get off there. But that's the point I wanted you to make, is we're drinking more fair trade coffee, and yet, Nadine, we want more fair trade coffee to come in here, and that's what you were saying. And what is CRS? Why do I keep saying CSR? Well, there's a thing called corporate social responsibility, and CSR is something that in my organizing we deal with all the time, so I have trouble getting Catholic Relief Services, CRS, out there.
We'll go with CRS or CSR.
Yeah.
But if you're going to Google it and go to the website, it's CRS,
yes.
Catholic Relief Services. I see Catholic Relief Services, and jump in, please, Madeline, anytime, as an educational tool, first and foremost. Catholic Relief Services around the world has been doing a lot of other social issues before they got into fair trade. They actually only got into fair trade fairly recently, I'll say like the mid-90s even. And if from our perspective, it's more about the human element. You know, I'm learning a lot about port, and I love Manola. None of that makes sense to me, why it isn't coming through here. But CRS looks at that global initiative of the people who are marginalized, the people who are being exploited, basically is our premise for wanting to promote fair trade, not just in coffee, but as you were talking about, chocolate, artisans, and I think all of this being New Orleans people, we love our local artists, our local musicians. We really have a fond appreciation, I think, in our community, more so than many communities, about that creativity, those gifts and talents that each person has, and so we really appreciate and want to respect the human hands that goes into it. Something CRS does is like a value-added program. You're talking about all the complications of certification. You know, we've been around and around with that sometimes. But the partnerships that CRS has for the coffee roasters and organizations like Serve, which would be for the clothes and jewelry and that sort of thing, is about reinvesting a margin of the money that is made when you make a purchase, reinvesting that with those cooperatives, with the small groups of people throughout, so that we make no interest or very low interest loans. It's about expertise in how, even marketing. You know, if you want to sell your artifacts, your handwork in America and the U.S., well, what colors are hot right now? And you know, how can you maintain that cultural taste and the products that you're making, yet make it a little more marketable, so that there is just a market of consumers in the U.S. So the economic part, I'll be honest, I'm learning and trying to wrap my head around it all the time. To me, the way CRS approaches it is all about the heart. You know, it's about that family. It's about especially women and children who are just exploited because of the working conditions, and all the middlemen or middlewomen who make the money at the expense of the farmer, at the expense of the artist.
And Nadine tries to act like, you know, well, gee, the money I don't really understand. But let me, the partnership we've been involved with the Fair Trade Committee, they're trying, and I think they're going to be successful, and we're certainly helping them every way we can, to get Loyola, to get, you know, some of the high schools, to get fair trade coffee being the archdiocese coffee of choice. And that adds up to $1. Hey, the heart, also there's, you know, a wallet below there somewhere. And we're trying to get that heart and wallet, you know, I know Romney doesn't understand this, but if we could ever get people to understand the heart and wallet don't have to be in another universe. This is not a parallel universe. It's possible to put them together, and if you put them together, there's some power involved. And so she's on the high road. I'm obviously taking a lower road, Chris, but you know, because look, if we get more people in the Archdiocese, there's a lot of Catholic schools, there's a lot of Catholic universities, there's a lot of good Catholic people who would understand the social justice argument behind fair trade if we did a better job of communicating. This is a small organizing committee. We're going to send out some evangelists here, and I want to make sure that, you know, we talk about that in other denominations and everywhere we go.
Well, and I might add that fair trade and what it stands for is really a part of our faith, and it's not just about the Catholic faith.
Right.
You know, it's a part of any faith, any denomination that cares about your neighbor. Period.
Trade
Statement.
people, exactly.
Exactly. So I think really, in the simplest way of looking at it, it's really about educating people and increasing the awareness of what fair trade is about, and even that there are fair trade options, because I think the vast majority of people like fair trade and they think we're talking free trade, and then, you know, it's just a muddle. And so when it's broken down into, hey, you know, do you work hard? Yes, I work hard. Do you want to make sure that you are valued and that you have breaks when you need to, and if you have 103 degrees of fever, that you can stay home and Wade won't make you come to work with a high fever, you know, and the conditions, and that you're paid justly, so that you can make a moderate life, and that whole dignity piece. I don't know many people that would really argue that point, except for, you know, like your greed moguls that you started talking about. So, you know, that's what we have to get out of the way and get to the average day-to-day consumer that could so make a difference if they understood that there really are options out there.
There's also a group that we have done a lot of work with. It's a national group of cooperatives. Once again, all the fair trade coffee we buy is from cooperatives, producer cooperatives. So this group organizes cooperatives on largely university campuses around the country. And they have about 50 different cafe, coffee shop operations that they are supporting in universities from Madison, Wisconsin to Berkeley to, you know, all the usual suspects, and some that might surprise, community colleges and whatever. So we have now convinced them to also join our program of wanting their coffee to come through New Orleans if we can figure out a way to make it work. And this is where it turns out to be more complicated than, you know, as always, Chris says he's learned something, I've learned everything. You think it's easy. We had some partners in Honduras that we were going to bring coffee up from. Janae and I and some others went down and visited with them. We started talking about what it would take to bring a microlata, you know, a little small portion of a container up. Well, that's when we, on the Honduran side, started confronting this contradiction that, well, there wasn't any good way to get it to New Orleans because most of the coffee from Honduras was going to Port of New York, New Jersey. And they started talking about a tariff. Oh, what could that be? What was going on there? And we started hearing a rumor, maybe the tariff came after Katrina. Well, that was, you know, that was fighting mad there. We can't put a tariff on steal our work and our coffee after Katrina. Well, it turned out, and I didn't find this out, Chris and I didn't find this out until we're sitting there kibitzing with people at the Port of New Orleans, their employees, that this tariff goes back, something like 30, 40 years. 40 years, they were saying. Because at one point, the ocean-going rate, now I'm really out of my mind, let me ask a question. The ocean-going rate for shipping didn't favor New York, poor babies. It favored the Gulf Coast and other ports, so there was a slight tariff put on all the other ports on the Atlantic coast, Gulf Coast and Atlantic, to let New York have parity. Well, it turned out all that's gone out the window over 30 years ago, so all the ocean-going tariffs are the same. But somehow, Lord knows, it didn't have to do with a disproportionate amount of political or commercial power. I know that couldn't have been the case. That tariff still exists to favor New York and to be disadvantage to not only New Orleans, but literally all Gulf Coast ports and Atlantic ports. So somehow it's, I don't know, New York against the world against New York, but, and you know, she was going to get back to us. I still don't know any of the details of what I just said, unless you've heard from her.
No, I haven't spoken to her, but probably, we're in the middle of contracts right now, so I'm a little bit at a disadvantage. But definitely will, their next meeting, I have to look and see and have it scheduled, but I'll make sure that she meets with us at the next meeting.
Good. So I then wrote a letter to the director of the Port of New Orleans, you know, one of these gee whiz. And I've never been able to write a letter as a small business person before, Robert. It was really, you know, yeah, I'm used to hitting, you know, writing for the union or writing for ACORN or writing, you know, that fist is so close to the wood there. So I'm all of a sudden able to put on, hey, you know, I'm just a business person trying to get more coffee. Why not make more, you know, suppose we have the biggest coffee port, we could do that, you know. And it turns out that letter didn't get answered either. So, you know, I didn't hear from the Port of New Orleans, I hadn't heard from the mayor of New Orleans. I thought all these people would be jumping. I ran into Eddie Murray getting coffee. He said, yeah, I'm for it. Well, I don't see him today, but I think a lot of people are for it, but nobody's really taking action. Yeah. So, it
makes, why not write to Scalise, Landry? I mean, this goes against everything free trade stands for, right? I mean, you know, it's like we don't even have free trade within the country, and they want free trade with foreign countries. It's like,
strange bedfellows, but
very strange bedfellows.
Yeah, I'm not going to be the one to write to Steve Scalise.
No, I'm saying there's.
But I think that's part of what we need to do. You're exactly. I mean, this is why I call this an organizing committee meeting too, because the truth is, I think Chris says we're going to meet with him. We'll get a meeting with him, but some of that's going to be an oh gee whiz. What are we going to do about a tariff out of New York? So if we don't, I think frankly we don't know why that tariff still exists, but we know it does exist. So we're going to need some, I mean, at the least, yeah, if somebody says petition, we'll put it on the counter, but half the time, you know, our clipboard gets taken. We don't even know where it goes. We think we're donating clipboards to all of you and UNO now. And I hope they're putting our customers on their email list because, you know, those things sort of come and go. You can see we've got a special homemade clipboard this time. It's an old piece of a sign back. Maybe people won't take that so quickly. It's a little bit too hoopty to take to UNO or Tulane or wherever people need a clipboard. I don't want to get off the subject, but the point being, yeah, we can get a lot of people to sign a petition, but we need more than just us, because it just looks like, oh, that Fairgrounds, they're fair trade. They're just looking for something to help themselves. We need to get that out, you know, around that says we want the port to do everything they can to bring fair trade coffee in. I don't know if that helps or hurts what ILA might be doing, but it ends up.
It does help, but also making them aware of how many containers in volume. The volume is what speaks. I mean, we're thinking 10, 11 containers. Turns out to be 70 containers or
90 for that group, and if we got these.
Yeah, Chris, can you put these numbers down? Like, what does that equal to?
Well, it's not in numbers and give you a comparative number. Containers when a ship comes in, we do approximately 1,800 containers per ship that may work over an 8-hour period. So it's relatively small in overall volume, but every container, I mean, you can either win a contract or lose a contract over 90 containers.
That's
So it's important to us. I mean, it may be small in volume, but it's important to the Port of New Orleans. You also have to look at the man hours, the trucks that bring it to the individual businesses here, and then we have local guys that are able to handle that coffee to offload it. So it translates to jobs for us. You know, 90 containers would probably be about 2 weeks' work for guys that are unloading those containers. Yes.
Yeah. It seems to me that in terms of economic development, that it would be, because I think about this a lot in terms of the direction that the city has gone in with economic development since Katrina, but even previously to that. And it seems like the most natural or most organic the most organic way of achieving that in New Orleans is the waterways.
Absolutely.
We're surrounded by water, so I mean, and I think what happened from my understanding is that the Port of New Orleans really started to, the beginning of it started to atrophy when trade stopped with Cuba and the embargo was on Cuba, and then after that, development started to really increase in Houston and New York. They really put a lot of money into developing their ports, whereas New Orleans, just they let theirs dry up as a trade-off to doing, well, now they're in the medical industry. They want to go into all these other industries that make no sense for a city, but that the one that makes the most sense they don't want to look at. I think it's a great, I mean, what this idea is, it's, you know, it does make a lot of sense, and I think, I mean, have you tried going after Amy Quirk in the Office of Economic Development in the mayor's office? Or maybe,
Well, no, I'm still old school. I really see this as the organizing committee.
Okay.
That, you know, instead of, and when Chris and I talked about this, you know, I didn't need to jump up in the public, you know, comment and start, you know, jumping on a soapbox. I mean, what I'm hoping to do is take this meeting and go forward, that we start getting more people talking about fair trade. And I think the message or framing around economic development is exactly right. I mean, when we talk to anybody after Katrina and said, look at what the assets are in New Orleans, where do we need to grow so that we're not just sort of Jamaica without a beach. Building off the hospitality industry and low wage, you know, no wage jobs. And they said the port. And, you know, there's these 90 we know are a bird in the hand. And if you get, you know, the co-ops to come here, if you get more roasters lobbying for this too, then you start to talk about that 90 and another 100 and another 20. And, you know, you start to really do something big, Robert.
You know, New Orleans needs to look at the history. What happened to bananas? You know, this was the banana port. It got cycled up. A couple years ago, and I apologize for my knowledge about the subject being a little dated, an article in City Business about Houston and the coffee business. And guess what? They got the new air-conditioned, whoop-de-doo coffee warehouses. The first thing they went for was the specialty coffees. And that was their door, that was their foot in the door. And I think, as much as we want everything to be specialty coffees, fair trade, those guys in the grocery store coffees may need to realize that they'll lose if Houston uses that chink in the armor to pull our regular coffee business away. Now, I want to convert the regular coffee. I'm not here, you know, suggesting that we need to protect Folgers and all the huge roasters out there, but it is a lot of jobs. It is a lot of, you know, and we are taking it for granted, and we're not recognizing. And who cares about the few 90 containers, you know? Well, Houston does enough to solicit that, and I think they know that if they can establish a trade there, they can uproot ours. So there may be an important ally if we let people in this traditional markets here know that they're being gunned for, and you guys have, you know, the linchpin, that fair trade edge. If we can get that back and keep it here, that means Houston doesn't, you know, rip off the rest of the port.
That's exactly right. And if it weren't for Folgers, we'd have trouble holding our position. There's a huge amount of coffee they're bringing.
I didn't enter the correct one thing. I didn't mean to say that fair trade coffee is cheaper. So you picked up on that. I had to say that we were able to produce it here at the same price at a retail level as a retail owner.
Right. I want to quickly modify that.
I realize I touched a nerve there because it's not. It's obviously, we do pay a little premium, but it's pennies compared. I mean, a cup of coffee, you know, 10 cents a product. I don't want to cut secrets here. You know, it's all about the paper, the milk, and everything else. You know, retailers can absorb a little bit to make this thing work, and that's my point. We don't, small business doesn't have stockholders to pay or advertising. So, but it is going to cost, and it's if you look at the organic business, people will pay a premium to know that their coffee is organic and that it's fair. And that's what the marketing that the Catholic folks are doing is going to be so important. We can begin, or you guys can, I'm retired, you guys can begin ask for that money up front from the consumer as long as he's conscientious and understands it. I said no.
And to piggyback on her real quick, pulling on the heartstrings of the people as well. I'm coming from an agricultural background. Agricultural workers are the least valued workers in any industry in the United States today. Not just foreign workers, but you look at domestic workers. So you go into the rural areas, and then you've got the whole Latino contingent that are picking tomatoes and that sort of thing. You've got like millions of people right now that are making pennies for work that they're doing that are worth, you know, significant dollars. So there's a huge amount of people that would sympathize, I think, with what you're trying to do, and bringing more value, or bringing more attention to valuing fair trade for foreign workers would help their cause as well. It's like, hey, yeah, look at us too, right?
Absolutely.
I was in West Texas after the hurricane. I taught school at Clovis, New Mexico, and I organic farmed to support my children until I got my teaching job. That's not the easiest thing you've ever done. It doesn't rain out there for 9 months at a time, right?
Growing anything in West Texas other than...
They started laying out the pipe, and I started asking what it's for. They said, you'll find out, and
That's
find out
right.
I did. But I had students who literally would get out of school and go hoe in the fields until dark during that, and they had to make it during season, because when it wasn't season, you know, and we had a whole migrant council. You're exactly right. I mean, that we have an
Grew up in Alberta, Canada.
untapped resource there.
3 months of summer.
Yeah. It's unreal what those people go through. It really is.
Well, and that's why we do fair trade, but it also, in the tension for an operation like Fairgrinds Coffeehouse is obviously you want people coming in for the coffee. And they're coming in, they're in a hurry, they're price sensitive, so we've never been able to charge a penny more than anybody else, and there's some you know, bells and whistles involved, but that's just, you know, whatever, that's just getting in the weeds. But the bottom line is, how do we're looking for advice on how we more clearly communicate this fair trade message, even to our own customers who are here every day. I mean, I think Robert said it, other people said it, some of them don't even realize what it means that we're having fair trade coffee and why we're paying more and doing more for it. We have a little display at the back of the place. We're talking about moving that up. I mean, I've sort of gradually beaten down the crowd so that they understand that those walls are never going to have anything on it that doesn't have to do with the mission of Fairgrinds. So, I mean, we're finally going to have that point eased in over the second year or so that we're here. But and part of what we're thinking about is, should we put more of an explanation about what fair trade is? And would that offend? Would it communicate? Would it help? I mean, we're looking for advice. I mean, but we do need everybody to more clearly understand as consumers why producers are important and making sure they get a fair share and how that translates into the market. This dispute is going to get between Fairtrade USA and Flow is going to really muddy the water. Because Fairtrade USA essentially broke away in order to make deals with huge coffee operations, Starbucks and many others. And if you were reading papers in, you know, Vermont and New Hampshire where there are advertisements asking Green Mountain Coffee and other producers not to go with Fairtrade USA because it's trying to essentially dilute the meaning of the cooperative small producing operation, which is what fair trade is. Yeah, I don't even want to introduce that because it just confuses people. Then, oh my God, I want to buy fair trade, and now I have to ask, what is fair trade? I mean, so here in this little small meeting, I don't mind saying that there are other issues, but because what we want is big tent, everything fair trade, come through New Orleans, see Fairgrinds that way, see, you know, major institutions as embracing the kind of principles here and doing that and making it work. But I need your ideas about how to do it. How do we get fair trade coffee in St. Aug, for example? That's a nice answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Father Tony.
They got a new player over there. He's
very close.
Well, hook us up. Hook us up. I mean, I don't care where they buy it. We've got a lot of roasters.
I'm working on fair trade. My daughters go to the International High School on Carondelet on Broadway location, and they are trying to do some fundraising for trips coming up. And I have offered our services and some education with these young people. I come from an education background, obviously, and getting them involved in understanding why it's important and why it's necessary from a global perspective, which is what they're doing at that school. And I would love to be able to have the time to do it in every school.
Yeah.
And that would
Well, certainly anything with an international aspect, that would seem like a logical one, just like the social justice mission for any people we're talking about. Well, we've got this in.
Actually, this one is, it's kind of past. So
okay, well, I'll come back to it later. We don't want to.
It was no.
You know, Wade, one of the things that CRS has found is that throwing all the statistics out is wonderful education for those who are really interested in the mission already. But it takes the personal stories of people, like you were talking about, and not necessarily directly related with fair trade, but in other issues of working with immigration or, you know, other such social concerns. Having a person speak to groups might be as small as this, but if each person here is touched and they go out and tell 10 people and 20 and so forth,
You get
it makes a
coffee
difference.
pickers in Louisiana.
So that may be something that we look into is having people who are directly, not really to come and, you know, personally I think as opposed to the woe is me side of it is, well, look what Fairtrade has done for me and my family and my community. Now because we're in this cooperative and it's a long-lasting relationship, not just someone coming in saying, okay, we're going to buy beans from you today, but then they're gone next year. But to have that relationship established so year after year, that family and that community can count on, no matter what the climate conditions are, they can count on a base salary in order to budget their families and their communities. And sometimes coffee prices are up, and maybe they could have gotten more, but because that base is established, they can just budget better and reinvest better. And it's those, when I've taken courses in the past on just any social justice issue, and you know, we can drown in this, right? It's so overwhelming sometimes. It's the success stories that really stay with me and encourage and motivate me to do something. So if anybody, you know, if we can, and maybe through CRS,
Whatever.
would be able to get
I
some
see Susan's hand, I heard Bill's
Sorry.
voice, so why don't we, Susan, and Bill.
There are so many small coffee shops in New Orleans that it might be nice to get Gladys from over at Cafe Treme, Kenneth Ferdinand from over at the Rose Nico. I don't know if I don't even know who owns the coffee shop on B, but maybe
Charlie,
Mr. Marcello. But it would be really important to get all of those people to one meeting to explain it, to let them go on. And, you know, it's not a competitive thing. It's just something that, you know, that they should know about. And then if you were there and then maybe somebody that could explain what type of conditions that they have to work in, if they came over here to explain it, and, you know, that might be an idea. And also,
I'd be surprised if the roasters aren't already knocking on their door.
Well, that's I was ready to, yeah, if I could answer that question. I mean, you know, part of us becoming, you know, I mean, just like any growing business, you know, we want to eat, you know, and so I had up until Fairgrinds, I had very little push for fair trade, and just like you're saying, you know, business owners are looking at the bottom dollar. So what you're saying is probably, you know, the best course of action to bring up to sell more fair trade, because what happens when someone like Wade comes to me and says, Kevin, I want fair trade coffee, I provide that service, you know, and so by whichever means necessary, I get the coffee and I roast it and I provide it. So, you know, and that's really, you talk about, you know, grassroots level, that's a really organic level. You talk about the wallet, the heart mesh, that's where it's at. You know, so it's a supply and demand thing. You know,
but it is.
You get a few cents more per cup.
There is
not really
for a coffee shop. It makes no difference. I mean, it makes very. I don't say no difference. But it makes
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to jump on that.
I'd be glad to have any of y'all come and help do the books here. What you're saying about the cost of coffee is really not true. But the bottom line is, people understand, businesses understand pressure. So telling people, hey, it's a good idea to have fair trade might work. I don't believe it will work, but saying that you're not going to come shop there and buy coffee there unless there's fair trade, that I know will work.
That's huge. That's everything.
But I think getting them all in the
It's
same
not
room
competitive
together.
because I just assume they could come to fair grinds for a while, and then once they understand that they've got to serve fair trade, they can go back to Envy or whatever. But you know, but the bottom line is we have tried to talk to other coffee purveyors, and they're not necessarily.
But
there's
I
a
think-
reason why there's CC coffee, right? For what they buy in bulk through the whole CC operation, it's very cheap for them to run a retail operation. And they're probably paying $2 a pound for what we're paying $8.50 a pound for. And that is, you know, yeah, it may only come down to 10 cents a cup, but you're buying 500. Say what?
I'm really talking about the small businesses. I'm not really talking about CC's or Starbucks or whatever, those small coffee shops in New Orleans that could use that as a selling point. And then if they use that as a selling point, as a marketing tool, it might even be better for their business in the long run.
But you
That's
see,
all I'm
but you
saying.
see the snowball effect. You see what happens when a coffee shop wants fair trade. The roaster's going to get fair trade. And so when someone, okay, so
You
now
gotta hear about it from the customers is all I'm saying.
Right.
When I get a text from a customer that
then
says,
I want a fair trade, and then I'm calling the importers to get fair trade, to get the port to call fair. So it all goes, it rolls back down the line.
if their customers are asking for fair trade, it'll make a difference. If I get a text from a customer and I'm in, you know, Bombay or whatever, and it says there are 11 people in line, we need 2 baristas, I'm going to follow up on that. I mean, I'm putting 2 baristas or 5 or whatever they want that minute. So I'm going to follow up on that, or if I get the toaster is broken from Mark Herman, or, you know, there's a we have some regulars who have some entitlements, and they, you know, my email's out there, I got the BlackBerry, it works everywhere, you know. So yeah, I actually believe if you're going, we went to Rose & Co. Our building was very close to there for years. That used to be our place of choice. If you're talking to Ferdinand all the time, or the few times he's over there, and said, "Where's the fair trade, brother?" There's going to be fair trade there someday. He'll try it out. He'll find out one of these people, Orleans or Coast Roast or French Truck, and he'll try it out. And if he gets response, but I mean, I think it's a lot easier to imagine that sort of pressure from consumers working as opposed to me saying, hey, why don't y'all compete fairly with me? Because that's really what it is. Why am I having to, you know, pay more for coffee and you're not giving enough to producers?
Okay. It would make my job.
And then Bill I'd recognize next, and then we'll go.
Yeah, well, from what I'm hearing, I mean, it's right now, in the 21st century, what we're all talking about is social networking, using the internet to the advantage. Whenever, you know, what you were talking about on the producer end, you would sell a lot more fair trade coffee if you could have pictures of those farmers and their families and let people the consumer know, this is the guy who grew your coffee. I mean, I'd pay an extra few cents if I saw, you know, if that coffee shop could hang up the picture of the grower and say, whose coffee am I drinking?
We actually have pictures of some of those growers downstairs, and we actually have video interviews with some of those farmers on our website. Am I wrong?
I spent half my time instructing people. Half my sales calls are instructing them why they should have fair trade. They need to hear it from somebody other than me.
But then also we're talking about, you know, on Facebook and stuff, and letting your friends know where real fair trade coffee is, so they know to ask and they know where to, you know, I mean.
And I'm agreeing with you. We just need to make it more viable.
Make it more viable.
I think the internet term. Social networking is viral, right? Make it, you know, like a disease spread everywhere.
I mean, because, you know, I mean, like, right now on St. Cloud, there's several, you know, little coffee shops. And, you know, the average person going by doesn't know who's getting their coffee from where, whether, you know, and there are a lot of people who make a choice, you know, that French truck is at Birdie's right now.
Yeah,
As
and
opposed-
St. Coffee.
And St. Coffee. So it's like, you've got versus, I don't know where they get it at, the one on the corner of the Healing Center. I mean, but.
Some are heck and gone.
Yeah.
Some are heck and gone from here.
No, but I'm just saying, it's like, you know, I mean, people do make the decisions, like the growing local stuff,
Right.
buying from the farmer's market. If I know where the coffee's coming from, I'll buy it. And that would actually, if we could get the coffee coming through the port, then we really know, instead of buying it from New York or LA or, you know, San Francisco, you know, wherever it may come from, it gives the producers, the roasters, the ability to say, these are the people, this is where it's coming from. And just making people conscious of that. Can you go to the coffee shop and see the producer on the wall? I mean, I think, you know, you can't go to Starbucks and see the farmer on the wall, no matter how much they want to say they're certified fair trade. You know, say, show me the farmer, show me the co-op.
Well, to win back our fair trade through the Port of New Orleans would require a specific campaign. And is that something that we would look for from the ILA?
Well, yes and no, because it becomes a little more complex. First of all, Dupuis was a large and major operation here in the Port of New Orleans. Unfortunately, they're a non-union company. So that's the big thing. I'm going to fight for jobs for a non-union company that we've been trying to get contracts with for years. Now, I think it's a great selling point and a great point to start for bargaining, because we're putting together an actual, I guess, recreating the industry and bringing in more jobs, and they may be more interested in bringing in ILA jobs. Or with our current companies that we have, we can possibly even bring that work over to the union companies that are currently doing work with us. So I'm sitting here listening to everyone, and it's going to be a lot more complex than what everybody believes. Second thing is, I'm thinking about the campaign, and the first thing that popped in my head, I don't know if we see that commercial, Pace Pecani sauce, that when you're eating this from New York City.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the coffee. That coffee you're drinking came from New York City. New Orleans, but hey, wait a minute. We take pride in our coffee. You know, we take pride in our culture of a slow, nice, easy lifestyle. Coffee's a niche in here, so we just need to think about the campaign and what we're going to do to actually bring not just the work, but bring fair trade here.
What if we did something that looked like a spontaneous
block report with big banners saying, "We want fair trade"?
Well, at the
poster.
Maybe at a port commissioners meeting, maybe we'd be outside.
I would think more or less right now where we are now is, and this is the way we do it, you can get more flies with honey than you can with salt. And so first of all, I mean, we're in the infancy. It's been about 2 months trying to find out all the details, find out who the players are, and sometimes with just knowing who's who and good conversation, you can get your foot in the door and get a lot more done. So I'm not saying or against that, but let's start first of all with just kind of feeling around and see who we can persuade.
See, I actually thought it was such low-hanging fruit. I was asking the mayor and the Port of New Orleans to just write a letter, reach out to this particular buying cooperative and tell them you want them back in New Orleans. And if there was a sort of tariff difference, that you do something to try to make it, you know, give them an incentive to come. And to me, that was sort of very, I mean, this wasn't a whole big thing. I'm not asking you to do what I really want, make New Orleans a fair trade corner of the world or whatever. I just, hey, why don't you reach out to them? There are, you know, a bunch of cooperatives around the North America. They might believe, they've always came from New Orleans. They might believe, some of them are very sympathetic to what happened to the city from Katrina. They might just respond to solicitation. And they're not even willing to do that. I mean, I don't know what they're doing for a living at the Port of New Orleans. I don't know why that's not JOB1 reaching out. And Chris introduced me to a lady who pretended that coffee was her job, but you know, basically this lady wouldn't listen to a word I had to say. I mean, she wanted me to sort of explain. I mean, she asked me, have I talked to brokers in New York about getting more fair trade coffee? And And I thought, what language am I speaking here? Why would I be trying to get more coffee here through New Orleans? Why would I be calling coffee brokers in New York and asking them to bring me more fair trade coffee? That's exactly what I'm on poor Kevin about all the time. Don't mean I'm a goddamn blank New York coffee. I don't want that blank New York coffee. I want some good New Orleans fair trade, Port New Orleans coffee, Longshoreman coffee. I'm a union man. I want union men handed my coffee. Right. And I'm going to call, you're telling me call a broker in New York? I mean, I just thought, boy, I mean,
They don't get it. Question. Who?
If I hadn't known Chris, God knows what I would have said. You know, that's all I can say. He was like, wait, we'll deal with this later. I'll get it. He could tell that percolator was going up here. I'm not normally a laid-back guy, but I was behaving there. And those meetings are not just put a sign up meetings. This is cut and dry. Those meetings, once they start, they've already figured out who's going to make the motion, who's going to second it. Everybody votes for it. I mean, it is like, woo, woo, train going through, woo, woo. So, you know, to jump into public comment, I've got to stand in front of the train, and there's a time for that. And if we don't get what we need a lot of people down there that day, but that'll be, but you know, the Port of New Orleans is not doing their job here. I had two of them promise they'd be at this meeting. Mark Moreau's daughter, don't want to call anybody's name, said, oh yeah, I'll be there. Plus the woman who I'm talking about, the Port of New York representative who's drawing a paycheck there. Oh, and she said she was from Honduras. I said, you're breaking my heart, Honduras. We're dealing with cooperatives from Honduras taking coffee from Cortez up to New York. Yeah, it's a problem, she said. Yeah. So yeah, I think when Chris says it's complicated, it's muy complicado. But the point is, you get petitions going, we figure out who we can talk to, we figure out how we can get consumers to sort of ring their bell onto coffee houses. You know where you go, you know. I can't believe you just talk to me when you go to a coffee shop. I bet you talk to everybody who's running those. You knew the names.
You're about to say something.
I was just asking, okay, is this tariff still in place?
Yeah.
Who benefits from it? Who gets this tariff? Who doesn't
New York,
want to let it go?
New York, New Jersey.
Okay,
New York,
so they don't want to let it go. So that's
yeah, clearly somehow
So
they're.
it's not a New Orleans City thing.
Okay, it's not just New York, New Jersey, because like you said, we lost a lot of our coffee to Houston as well.
Is this like a federal tariff? I mean, you know, okay.
It's some sort of international body that sets tariff rates. It's a whole world, you know, WTO. I mean, all this sort of everything you've heard about, protested about, knew was. It's all right here.
So is it like Honduras wants to send all their coffee to one spot? They want to send all 90 containers to one spot. They can't send one month send them here, 1 month send them there to spread the wealth around. I mean,
Honduras just is going where the purchaser is asking the coffee to be.
Okay. It's a shipper and
it's a buyer.
Rate based on whatever that cargo might be, and so that rate will determine.
And he's obligated to get the.
So these cooperatives go and want to buy from
price.
Yeah, he's obligated to get the best price. So
and that's what you're looking at, price. If he knows it's cheap for him, the New York market is much larger than just small New Orleans. So if I can bulk ship plenty of containers to the Port of New York and bring it in really cheaply, it's going to cost me the same to go to New Orleans.
So the shipper even gets it.
He does a bulk job, and then it's easy for me to ship a small, you know, amount of containers to New Orleans another way. So they do.
And these 20 different roasters that come together to buy this 90 containers. Some of them are in Canada, some of them are in Vancouver, some of them are on the West Coast, some of them are in Milwaukee, some of them are in Texas and Tennessee or whatever. For some of them, it's potentially better for them to bring through New York than it is New Orleans.
Well, it seems
but they always used to bring it through New Orleans because this was closer. You can truck things right out or rail them right from New Orleans.
Barge.
Huh? Barge, is that how they, okay?
Barge. We're really pushing a lot of barge work up in Mississippi because we're trying to market it as the cheapest way to ship, not congestion both ways. It's a green way to do things.
Yeah,
so,
the global warming.
Yes.
The shipping by water is.
Well, I don't want to get all environmental, but you can't believe how bad the global warming problem is from shipping. It's like 15% or something of the total global, you know, global warming problem comes from running these ships. So if you run them to New York, you just, suck down a bad thing there.
You can drop them off in New Orleans and put them on electric trucks.
Yeah.
Well, or these barges,
Or a barge, exactly.
Tote that barge.
Right.
A barge can take 1,000 containers on a barge with one barge, push it up with one tugboat. It's 1,000 trucks on one barge and go up everywhere.
Yeah,
It's a lot cheaper.
So you think,
Roadways.
Totally makes sense.
you would think there's something to talk to all these fair trade roasters about as well. I mean,
Well, they're ready to listen. It's just we don't have anybody who can make them a pitch. I mean, so it's my self-interest to have them come to New Orleans. I'm sort of saying, hey, come out, bring more of your stuff to New Orleans, but the port needs to do something. Somehow, you got to get something in the air.
Maybe you make it really super complicated, they'll like it.
Yeah, they say in New Orleans, in some parts of New Orleans, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense, okay? How much are the tariffs that New York are getting from these 90 containers? How much money is it that would be the pitch that they would understand here? That we would be receiving X amount of money from the tariffs from the port if it went here to what is the dollar amount for these 90 containers? I mean, it might
Well, I
not
think
be
the argument
enough
is the
where
one
they
Robert
can
made.
look at it. That would be one way to look at it.
But the business plan for the Port of Houston seems to be the strongest argument that if you build, and that's why I'm trying to argue, let's build a niche of being the fair trade port for North America, coming from anything south. And that, the same thing the Port of Houston is talking about in terms of specialty coffees. They couldn't go bulk, they couldn't go just every big green bean, but that's very
Houston's
smart.
been bulking up their port for the Panama Canal.
Well, and we've fallen short. We've been trying to get that campaign off, and that's why this is actually great with fair trade. We've been trying to get the word out that for every dollar you spend in the port, you get $11 back. And we know as investors, if we can get that type of investment, we'd all put our money into that stock.
$11. Wow.
To one.
Well, there's some big article in what used to be our daily paper about the Panama Canal is going to make a difference in terms of how much traffic comes up here, and coffee could be a big part of it. I mean, some coffees that you're raising out of Costa Rica and Guatemala are on the West Coast, so that could all come back through the canal and up here. But we're way out of our job classifications here. I'm not, trying to be, a port commissioner. But I am still trying to talk about what can we, as 25, 30 people here, Katie, what can we do to get this thing rolling?
Well, to be honest, I think the first step is to define what the port means in order to just make it really clear, in order to organize the cost. And so having you define, it is numbers, it is volume, it is, but also creating, the arguments. Barge transport is this much significantly cheaper and environmentally friendly, and the Mississippi gives access to the majority of the country, and then it trickles down to educating the consumers and what fair trade organic is and how it benefits both the worker and the consumer and the market and everything in between. So I think the first step is really just outlining it all and what do you need from us, and then how do we then organize within our different faculties that those are how do we meet your needs, because I think it ends with you, so, and we where the branch is out, so I think that's the first step is just to outline it all.
Actually, it starts with you. Economics is really what's going to change it. When you have an actual demand for something, that's going to start it. Now, by the union being a part of that demand, we can actually get in and get demand hours, get people working. That's part of the argument. But once you create the demand economically, the Port of New Orleans is going to listen. That's really the key.
While that component thing is of what we've got here is really powerful. I mean, social justice people have their conscience in on the issues, but they've never thought in terms of New Orleans. I mean, when you sell or buy fair trade, and Catholic charities do this, organizations do this all across America, they don't really understand your issues. And this being there, now it's the local doors, the retail, coffee shops, we're all beginning to hear this for the first time and not realizing and asking the question. I didn't mean to interrupt, but.
Well, I just need some clarification. I am under the impression that most of the fair trade roasters are not in our area of the country. So does that have anything to do, I know you're talking about coffee in general, and then we're talking about fair trade coffee.
Very few.
Maybe you can talk about that. We're
Very
talking
larger
more Colorado, Northwest, and the
Yes,
northeast
very
part of
few.
our country. So it is being shipped closer to the fair trade roasters.
And,
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah, well, it depends. I don't know, Texas's number of fair trade roasters, but there are very few in Louisiana and Mississippi for sure.
It's just true everywhere.
Yes.
It's true everywhere. You have more fair trade roasters on the West Coast and in Canada than you do.
Yes.
But there are 20 of them who've come together to buy together. So that they're easier to approach than just be talking to these three, hey, you want to come together and buy a container? Well, who knows whether they can put together the money to buy a container. I know I can't, but maybe, so that's a harder conversation. But where somebody has already organized 20 big fair trade roasters around North America, who all used to bring all of their coffee through New Orleans until August 29th of 2005, you sort of have a leg up there. You're trying to get somebody not to do something they've never done, but to do something again that they used to do. And that's why I'm focusing on them, but there are lots of other places we need to go.
So does it help asking this because I want friendly terms with my ex-husband who's in the shipping industry. So is there any information or would that angle be of any help?
Absolutely.
Shipping as opposed to the port, and because obviously there's a block at the port for some reason. So getting information from the shipping industry, what kind of, makes that go?
Well, it's coming from different angles. I mean, of course, the Port of New Orleans is going to have their voice, but you have to change this tariff situation, and that's really where it's going to come at, and it's going to be driven by economics and people, voices coming from different avenues, whether it be the port, whether it be from the shippers, and even the customers, and that's what needs to happen. When they hear everyone communicating, and they say, hey, wait a minute, why is this tariff in place? Why are we doing this? How is it New York can be #1, compete with New Orleans, #1, #2 all these years simply because of tariff? That's the issue. It doesn't make sense. And in the tough economic times as well, people want to know why. Why are we spending the extra money when we don't have to?
And we'll follow up. We'll talk to Senator Landrieu. We sent, how many letters did we send to politicians here for this meeting? 40 or 50. So it's not like we're not going to reach out, but we need more of that. I did say this, that at about an hour and a half, I was going to start closing it down. That doesn't mean the conversation stops. Obviously, many times these dialogues, people talk among themselves. There are lots of good ideas. I see hands still up. But I want to start moving to a summary. I think the summary is we're trying to convene all of you who've been interested enough to at least come here, that we're going to be reaching out more on this issue. Clearly, Katie made a good point, Beth made a good point, there are other good points about what a campaign might look. We all have a role to play. There might be a petition, there might end up being this, that, and the other. We need to get the port. We need to do a better job of communicating as consumers, as organizations, as institutions, why we care about producers, why we care about the impact on families, why we, every time we have an espresso, a cup of coffee, we can make a difference in lives in Central America. There's not a lot of times we get to do that. And it rolls over to what fair trade music might be and what fair trade chocolate means. And it says something about the sustainability of the lives we lead, even with whatever small dollars we spend. So that's sort of the mission. We're going to try to do a better job here at Fairgrinds. That was obviously, I think, Z and Danae and I and others. Katie will have a lot better sense of how to move forward next year as we look at how to upgrade how much we communicate to people about the fair trade nature of Fairgrinds. And we'll be doing that, but we can't do it by ourselves. And that's part of why we wanted to use our chance here in September to have a dialogue on, hey, this is our problem, fair trade. If you want to look at it that way, we need to get our community to start moving forward. So speaking personally and for Fairgrinds, I appreciate everybody coming and being part of this. I know people have a lot to say to each other, and I hope you will, but thanks for coming.